Monster Hunter is a massive and intimidating franchise to get into if you're not already very familiar with previous titles. So as someone who's quite new to the franchise myself, I wanted to start creating a series of beginner guides to help other people who are new to the series get up to speed. Learning from the pros is all well and good, because you know they know what they're talking about. But when you've got over 2,000 hours in a game, it's very easy to start taking certain things for granted, and then stop seeing them as vital pieces of information that newer players may not already know. So that is why I wanted to create this, and this is going to be my first in hopefully a big ongoing series of Monster Hunter Wilds videos to help get newer players up to speed. Hell, even some more experienced players may hopefully pick up a thing or two that they've forgotten over the years, and with many new mechanics and changes to the gameplay in Wilds, now is the perfect time for a refresher of your knowledge on all things Monster Hunter. So if you like the sound of that, make sure you're subscribed to Dom's Roundtable, and let's jump into the first tip. The first thing I'll advise that you do is to practice with the quick select wheel and spend your time setting it up. Not only because this time around Wilds allows you multiple different quick select wheels, but also because quickly being able to flick between your healing, your whetstones, your traps, bombs, ammo, all the different items that you need to use in the heat of combat is going to be absolutely invaluable. So you want to practice with the quick select wheel quite a lot and ingrain the action of selecting things into your muscle memory so that it's one less thing you have to focus on in the heat of a hunt. As I say, in Wilds you can have multiple quick wheels which you can switch between, so there are certain items like your healing that I advise you place on every single wheel, and even more so, make sure you set it up in the same place every time, so you always know where your healing is in a pinch. Also remember to dedicate specific wheels to specific sets of actions, just to make things easier on your brain. So examples would be a dedicated trap wheel with 1 or 2 slots left for your healing and your whetstones, for example, and the same thing with a kill wheel with various projectiles and explosives. Next up, I advise you focus on only 2 weapons out of the gate for probably your first 40 to 50 hours at least. And let me explain, there are 2 primary reasons for this. Firstly, before you pick your 2 weapons, obviously feel free to try them all out. I do have a beginner's guide to weapons video that you can go and check out and get a very quick brief overview of the main highlights of each weapon. But once you've had a bit of practice with all of them, try and pick 2 fairly quickly. And the 2 reasons for that are, firstly, you need to upgrade your equipment to become more powerful and stand a better chance at defeating tougher monsters. So trying to craft and upgrade every single weapon and armor is going to leave you very short on materials and simply isn't feasible. It's at best a super inefficient way to progress, and at worst going to stop you from progressing the game entirely. And the second reason is because of the complexity and skill ceilings of every single weapon in this game. Monster Hunter is a daunting game for beginners. Every single weapon requires countless hours to master, and if you're trying to juggle too many at once, you're going to get very lost and confused. So you can use my beginner weapon guide video to give you a quick overview of the 14 different weapon types, and once you've tried out enough of them, pick the 2 that you feel like are going to be your favorite and stick with them for now. In previous Monster Hunter games, I'd have said just the 1, but now you have the ability to store a spare on your Sacred in Wilds, which can be fantastic to broaden the variety of situations you can tackle, such as having a slashing and a blunt weapon, or even a melee and a ranged, whatever fits your playstyle. And talking of having the correct weapon for each situation, this next tip is to really learn where your preferred weapon excels. Now, that isn't to say that if your weapon is inefficient for a situation, it's going to completely ruin your game. Please do note that every weapon can kill every monster. In fact, if you're an absolute god at this game, then you can beat every monster with every weapon at level 1. This is technically possible. So please note that everything I'm telling you are just suggestions to help you get better and help you have an easier time with the game whilst you get to grips with it. But at least at first, for this tip, try to stick to the strengths of your weapons, and then have a party that complements those strengths. For instance, if you primarily like slashing weapons, usually the feet and tail of the monsters are where you will want to be attacking, because for the most part you'll be dealing more damage, and also these areas are more likely to drop weapon appropriate crafting materials. For blunt weapons like the hunting horn or hammer, the head of a monster should be your priority, whereas things like thrusting and piercing weapons can be a bit more situational and they can fill multiple roles depending on where they're needed. And then you've also got the elements of your weapons. But I don't want to bog you down with too many details. We will cover elements and weapon types in a different tip. Another absolutely crucial feature in this game is traps. Traps are a very, very important aspect in Monster Hunter, so make sure you have always got some on hand and potentially even the materials to make some more. Not only can traps be used to keep faster monsters in one place for a period of time to allow you to keep wailing on them, they can also be placed strategically to try and stop them from running away, but most importantly, traps are used to capture monsters. Many rare items in the game can only be acquired through capturing monsters instead of killing them, as they will grant you different loot. So when you've become a bit more savvy with the crafting system, and you know what items you need to make your next piece of armor or get your next weapon upgrade, you will end up finding that capturing your next few hunts is going to be far more beneficial for you than just trying to kill them. And as another little bonus tip for you, you will know when it's the right time to throw down a few traps to capture a monster, as there will be a very different animation than them just running away. They will begin to limp and hobble away as they try to flee from you, as opposed to when they are just running to a different arena to fight you in. Next up, I just wanted to talk to you about the power of playing in a group of people that you know. You can solo this game, but if you do like playing in a group, then this tip will help you do that in the most efficient way possible. If you are playing with people you know, who all want to help each other level up their gear and craft better equipment, or even if you're playing with bots, this can be far, far better for you than playing with randoms. Playing with random people, sometimes they will only have their interests at heart, as breaking different parts of a monster will award you with different upgrade materials. So they may just want to break the part that they specifically need a few times before then rushing the boss down as quickly as possible, not thinking about your needs as well. As an example, generally speaking, breaking a monster's horns will drop materials focused around upgrading hammers, whereas tails are more important for slicing weapons. So you can make sure you're working together as a group to break as many parts as often as possible to benefit everyone in your party, so you can all level up and upgrade together. And a great way of doing this, if you don't have any friends to play with, I know I'm in the exact same boat myself, is to join my Discord server. That's exactly why I set it up. There are many people in there willing to help you out, and I am so grateful for the help and support I have received from my Discord community. Hopefully you will be too. We have many hunters ready to help you out that we have gathered from various different group-focused franchises, such as Space Marine, Helldivers, and soon-to-be Night Rain. This next tip is along the same vein as focusing on one or two weapons for a long period of time at first, until you get good with their combos and power them up. This tip specifically is to not needlessly craft everything right out of the gate just because you have the materials to do so. It will spread your crafting materials too thin and stop you from acquiring bigger, badder, and more powerful equipment for a longer period of time. Another really powerful side benefit from following this tip is that you'll have plenty of crafting materials left over, saved up, to create a brand new weapon type that you may desperately need in a pinch. Say you're stuck on a hunt against a monster. Say you only have one single incredibly powerful weapon, but the hunt that you're now stuck on has a monster that is very resistant to your weapon type. Be it your elemental damage or the actual weapon type itself, some enemies are just more resistant to certain types of weapons, depending, for example, on how heavily armored they are. And you may well be stuck on this one for a while. Like I said, you can get through all challenges eventually, but it's gonna be a slog. But lucky for you, you saved up loads of crafting materials, so you can now grab a few extra mats that you need and quickly craft a solid weapon that is going to exploit the weakness of the monster you're currently stuck on, and hopefully you'll have no problem taking it down. And talking of exploiting enemies' weaknesses, this leads us into a perfect next tip. You will encounter monsters of specific elemental types, and you do want to exploit their weaknesses wherever possible. Talking about ice monsters, fire monsters, any monster really that has an obvious specific element or damage type that is there to be exploited. Don't forget, early on in the game, whilst you're still building up your skills and your equipment, even though you may not necessarily need every advantage, you want to grab every advantage you can get, because it's good practice for when you might need it later. Some of the early game monsters you probably can just brute force after a few attempts, but if you want to fight all of these super bosses late game, you are going to need to really understand every single area of this game. So learning to exploit enemies' weaknesses early on, and learning to gather knowledge on monsters and checking your field notes for their weaknesses and their drops is a very, very important mechanic that you want to get into the habit of doing early on. At least until you become an absolute god at this game and you can solo everything with even the most inefficient weapon type. Next up, my friends, try to pick up the in-game terminology fairly quickly if you can, especially if you are planning on grouping up with randoms, because a lot more of the experienced player base will use exclusively these terms, and in my experience, honestly, people can be a little bit elitist about it if you don't know these terms. That's not calling out Monster Hunter players specifically, I'm just talking about elitists in general. But with hardcore games like this, and coming from a Souls background myself, you can encounter a lot of them if you get unlucky. And for this reason, there are two things that I can suggest. Firstly, there is already a bunch of really good Monster Hunter terminology videos out there on the interwebs already, so go and check them out if you like. Or if you want me to, I am happy to collate all of this information and make one mega long terminology video from a beginner's perspective, so you're not having to go and watch a bunch of different videos and try and piece all of this information together yourself. And secondly, I know I said it earlier, but join my Discord server. I do not abide any kind of hostility, negativity, elitism, anything like that. So we genuinely have around 10,000 of the nicest people I've ever met, always willing to help get you up to speed. And as an added bonus, you can then join groups in my voice channels and play with really, really good people to your heart's content. As we're already talking about using in-game terms, there is a base 3 cart limit. And what that means is if you're out on a mission and you die, or cart as the player base calls it, that means you have lost a life. And if you cart 3 times, it's game over and you have to start that mission again. For that reason, now that you understand what that means and how it works, this tip is all about when you should or shouldn't use flares to call for aid. So let me set the scene. If you are planning on using flares and you do think you're going to want some help, I would advise only doing so if you've got all 3 carts left. By this, I don't mean send out a flare and beg for help immediately. I mean try the boss 3 to 6 times, and if you've had 2 full wipes, then you should consider calling for some backup. And there's 2 main reasons that I would suggest you do it this way. Firstly, you don't want to go throwing out a flare when you're down to your last cart. This is just bad etiquette, and you will unfortunately piss some people off, because one slight mistake, the whole mission's a failure, and you've wasted not only your time, but the people you have called in to help you as well. And secondly, if you are throwing out a flare instantly, without fighting the boss a few times first, you may end up getting people joining you who are just as clueless as you are currently. So if you try and call for aid immediately without even attempting a boss, it's going to be the blind leading the blind, and due to the inflated stats that the monster has from fighting a bigger group, failure is just as likely. So either join with a pre-made group, or at the very least attempt a boss and practice a few times, then throw out your flare at the start of your next attempt, and you'll be better and stronger for it. And the last tip I've got for you for this video, but don't worry, there will be plenty more beginner tips videos, this game is massive, is more of a strategy that I advise you employ in the early game. So in the early game, you don't need to rush down bosses as fast as you can. In fact, taking your time and making sure that you are breaking all of the parts multiple times is going to net you not only more upgrade materials, but obviously more skills as well. You will learn the bosses more, you will learn your movesets more. So don't try to blitz through the missions as fast as you can, just so that you can keep up with your most experienced friend, because you will fall behind in the late game because you haven't done enough farming and you haven't done enough practicing. And yes, later on in the game, speedrunning can actually be a viable farming method, as you unlock things like bounties which can increase your chances of getting rare materials simply just for killing the monster, in which case then killing it could be the fastest way possible to farm. But that is a late game thing. Don't worry about stuff like that now. If you're still in the early game, if you're still new to the game, focusing on building up your skills and your knowledge of your weapon is far more important. So focus on breaking all of a monster's parts, learn the moveset, and build up a good storage of various materials so that if you decide to branch out later and you decide the weapons you're using aren't for you, you have the ability to do that and you won't need to do much farming. That's it for this one, my friends. Let me know what guide you would like next, and as always, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.